Hey, good morning, team. It is Tuesday, September 24th. I'm Amy Corr. I'm here with Kevin Van Eck, and here we are at the Goose Island office. So today we are moving into a fall market. We're getting ready to wrap up 2024, right, Kev? Hard to believe, I know. So today we want to talk about our clients for life and making sure that we are digging deep into relationships right now. So on that note, let's grab our coffee. Hopefully you've got something great, and let's jump into the next episode of Coffee with Amy and Kevin.
Let's go. Good morning.
Let's do this.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Yes. So all the settlement, we've talked about that ad nauseum in a lot of cases, but it was necessary.
Nausea is what we've been calling it.
I like that.
Really good, right?
Yeah. Catchy. But I think we got to move past it, right?
Yep.
And it's time to focus on, you're hearing all these things about going back to the basics and all that, and that might be annoying, but it's true. And part of the basics is really focusing on relationships and going back to what we know has built our business over the years and what is the foundation of real estate.
Yeah, and it's relationships. I mean, one of the things we should always be doing is staying in contact, right? I know a lot of us plan client events. We tend to do pop buys. I know for the fall season, a planted mum plant is always a favorite.
Love a mum.
Right? But I also think what we want to be bringing to our clients and what really can move the needle is information on what's happening in the market right now that might be impacting them. So we wanted to touch on a couple of things that we've been talking about that we think could be kind of game changers right now, real time in September 2024 that you can be using to reach out to your clients. And the first is talking about rates. We know that, what was it, a week and a half ago? No, I think it was a week ago, that the Fed took a really pretty aggressive or strong approach and reduced rates by not just a quarter point, which was a lot of the estimation, but actually by half a point. So we saw actually that same day, though, ironically enough, interest rates went up.
Right.
But as we are seeing, they're starting to have some movement, and we think that ultimately what's going to happen is we're going to start seeing some effects in the market as it relates to rates that's really going to benefit our clients. So here's one idea that we want to plant for you right now, and that is, how many of you have worked with buyers over the last 2 years where they bought a home and were probably at a pretty high rate?
6s, 7s.
Yeah.
7s.
And I think what we want to have you consider is reaching out to them proactively, because maybe it's not this year, but maybe it's into 2025. That rate number might come down enough where it is worthwhile for them to actually refinance. But what I was saying to a lot of agents that I've been talking to is you have to kind of plant the seed now, because let's face it, they kind of have to get their ducks in a row, even if they are refinancing, right? So think about, if rates are going to move down, who do you know and who can you proactively reach out to now that's going to benefit when that rate hits that number that makes sense for them. And on the flip side, let's also talk about sellers a little bit, right? Because I think what we're also seeing right now is that sellers are not going to move when rates are at the 7 or 8% mark. But if we start seeing things where they come into the 5s, I guarantee you're going to see some sellers who are ready to make a move and kind of take that next step that they've kind of been holding out on.
I would agree.
Great thing to be reaching out to your clients about.
Agreed. And I think it's really valuable for you to understand or know what your client's interest rate is, right? So as part of this outreach, make sure you're documenting your conversation too, so you know when the time is right to actually reach out to them for that action.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? Cool. Well, let's talk about number 2. This is going to get a little data heavy. But these stats are really helpful because what's coming up? The election. In case you missed it, ICYMI, we have an election coming up November 5th. And a big question on everyone's mind that every 4 years comes up is, how is it going to impact the real estate industry?
Yeah.
So we pulled some stats, and coincidentally, this comes from KCM, who we touted a couple of weeks ago. And so the number one stat, this is really interesting, in a typical market, in October and November, due to seasonality, the velocity or the volume of homes selling drops by 9%.
Wow.
So that's leading up to the election. Now that's in a typical market.
That's just in a normal market.
That's a normal market, right?
Okay.
Not during an election year. During an election year, though that volume, the number of transactions actually dips by 15%.
Okay.
So it's a significant drop, and we know you can feel it out there where people are pausing and they're not making moves because there's some uncertainty in what's going to happen. So understand that. But what happens, and this is the bright side here, is that we know based on data and the past, we looked at the last 11 election years, is that those transactions don't go away. They're simply pushed into the following year. Those people still need to move. They still have life changes. They just put it on pause leading up to the election, and then we see those transactions bounce back in January, February, March, the spring.
Okay.
So that's an important stat to know, and also to communicate to your clients. The other stats we have, and this is promising too, when it comes to both interest rates and to pricing and home values, is that in 9 of the last 11 election years, the number of transactions actually went up after the election.
Okay.
Right? So it actually increased over the previous years. Then this is the big one when it comes to home values, is that in 7 of the last 8 election years, the actual home values increased following the election. So appreciation continued. And the only year where it didn't happen, can you guess?
I'm going to say it was an even year, election year, right?
Yes.
2008.
Wild guess.
How did I know that?
I don't know.
Gosh, I'm smart.
You are. Cheers to that one.
I didn't cheat
Take a sip.
and see the slide or anything ahead of time.
No, didn't tee that one up at all. But 2008, of course, we knew what happened in 2008 to 12, so that's not a surprise. But that one year is the only year out of the last 8 where home values did not increase. And then also interest rates came down leading up to the last 8 election years, and that's what we're seeing right now, which is really interesting.
Yeah, we are seeing that. Yeah. I mean, a lot of data, and one thing to note is we will include these slides that we received when David Childers did come out locally to App Properties, and this is some of the information he shared during our agent summit. And it's just really impactful. It's great information to share with clients because it shows trends. And I think what we're trying to do is, we don't always have a crystal ball. We do have a magic 8 ball, but, right, we've
Somewhere
used it
around
before.
here.
Yeah.
Yep.
But we don't always know what's going to happen, but trends do help in predicting what we think is going to happen.
Yes.
And you can use this information to be able to, build confidence in your clients and also just set them up to know that they can be pretty comfortable. What I love is the idea that really the election is just going to delay what's going to happen, but it's not going to derail anything, which I know sometimes consumers get a little bit nervous about when they don't have all of the right information. So great data. One other piece that we were talking about that we also thought was so important to talk to clients about right now, because I do know as prices have gone up and has been lack of inventory in a lot of these markets, I do know there is still that underlying question of, are we in a bubble and will we ever see something like we saw in 2008? And I know that's always a concern. A lot of times agents say that they are still talking to clients about that. And what David had in his slides that I loved is he talked about the fact that we are actually in a real estate market that is probably the strongest and most healthy that we have ever seen, kind of even in our history or in a very, very long time. And some of the numbers that he talks about is that we have 13.2, I'm stealing these numbers right here. Owner's equity is at an all-time high right now. We've got real estate values at 48.2 trillion. But most important, our equity is at 35 trillion. I know trillions, lots of numbers,
That's a big
right?
number. Big
and that our debt that we owe on our properties is only at 13 trillion. Now, I know those are kind of interesting numbers, but what that's really telling you is that right now people have great equity in their homes. So also a great reason to talk to and reach out to sellers, even if they aren't thinking about moving. I think what I would be reaching out to is if they've got a lot of equity to tap into, and I worked with them the last few years, I might be talking to them about some of those projects that they were thinking about doing, which will only add value to their asset, right? So maybe reaching out and talking to them about that, given the fact that over the last few years, guaranteed they've built in some incredible equity. And then I think the other thing that's good about this is that we are still seeing stats that next year appreciation is going to continue. So as a buyer, even though the market is probably pretty competitive in a lot of areas, the reality is buying now is still, it appears to be still a really, really great long-term investment.
Agreed.
So these, again, data points, information that you can be sharing with your clients that I think add real value and really strengthen the relationship right now.
Yeah, I would agree. You can still drop off, here's the bottom line, right? You can
can
still
still
drop
drop
off
off mums.
pumpkins, pies, a mum,
Yep.
whatever that is.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you want to position yourself as an advisor. And look, whatever happens, whether they buy or sell or don't, If you position yourself as an advisor and you give them information, now they can make a decision rather than being confused, not sure what to do. And you're the person that allowed that to happen. Gave them the information where they can make an educated decision as to where they go next or if they stay.
Yeah, I mean, it's just driving the idea that it's all about the relationship, right?
That's right.
Focusing on their needs, giving them that information, and I really do think the rest kind of takes care of itself.
Agreed.
So, on that note, we hope you found some of this information helpful. You can check out the slides in our attachment that we've included here. Make it a great Tuesday, and we will look forward to seeing you next time. But until then, remember, you got this.